And our first guest is the former mayor of San Francisco, Mayor Art Agnos, and we welcome you to our program.
Thank you very much.
You were on my last program. Yes, the last program was a different era. This is a different era, but it's the same problem. This agency, the San Francisco Housing Authority, is probably the most incompetent agency in San Francisco. And of course, that's pretty bad looking at Muni and all the other agencies. You've gotten in the middle of this as a receiver. I want to get into that, but I want to get into the bigger picture. So let's go quickly to this incident that you're trying to clean up.
Okay.
What are you trying to clean up?
Well, some 8-9 years ago, there were several court jury trials wherein the Housing Authority was accused and successfully prosecuted by the plaintiffs that a terrible fire in December 13th, 1998 caused the death of 4 children between the ages of 6 months old and 6 years, who burned to death in a project at 132 West Point in the middle of the Hunters Point public housing developments, along with their grandmother. Their surviving family sued the Housing Authority for negligence because it was proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, with all the appeals exhausted, that the absence of a smoke detector on the first floor and a faulty heater caused the fire and resulted in the people burning to death when they could have escaped. They sued. They won a judgment of over $12 million, and the Housing Authority and HUD simply flipped them off. They refused to pay it. There were 2 other sexual harassment lawsuits, one the same way, by Housing Authority employees on Housing Authority employees. The Housing Authority is refusing to pay, and HUD is refusing to let them pay. And so the court has exhausted all of its legal remedies, and it's asked me to become the court receiver to run the Housing Authority. It's a very strong order. I can hire, fire, abrogate contracts, make new ones, all with the express purpose of finding the now almost $14–15 million to pay these judgments, because if they're not satisfied, then the Housing Authority will never emerge from the terrible financial abyss that it's in now.
You come from the Housing Authority.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been with it for how long? You started
I have
with
a
it.
deep history and a very deep connection and affection for the Housing Authority. My first job in 1966, right out of graduate school, was coming to the Housing Authority and working as a social worker in their Human Rights and Civil Rights Division for tenants, working with them, empowering them. Then when I became mayor, that was my #1 agency. When we brought in a new director, I called all the department heads and said, this department gets treated like the premier departments of this city.
And it has been ignored by most mayors. It's more of a troublesome bother.
It's a poor stepchild of city government, because you see, its product is not an attractive one. It's not a productive one in the sense of the airport, which brings tourists in and we make money, or the port, or the health department, which treats a lot of people, or the police department, any of recreation and park. Nobody really wants anything to do with the Housing Authority, because it houses poor people, and they create problems in those projects that mayors don't want to deal with.
Why? What do you think is the core of this affection you have for this department and since you began?
Well, because it is poor people who are seeking the same thing you and I are, Art. They're trying to have a better life for themselves and their family, and we should be doing everything in our power to give them the kind of housing and the supportive services that they need to become self-sufficient, which is what every public housing resident I've ever known wants to do.
But in the end, and we're going to get to some solutions that are out there, because in 15 minutes we're not going to leave the audience in total frustration. Before we get to that, doesn't it frustrate you as you look at this authority and you look at many of the tenants who are still out there in the 3rd or 4th generation living out there, that this experiment that began right after the war to help poor people, get them started, it was supposed to be temporary housing. That's why it looks like temporary housing. Don't you get frustrated, ask the question, what is wrong with the whole concept when people are locked into their poverty, they have no hope, and then look at the crime and the sadness and tragedies of youth killing youth? Doesn't it ever hit you as a social worker, with the heart that I know you have, to say, I can't support this anymore, I've seen 40 years of this, it's not working, what am I going to do now?
Well, I know it can be better. I know it can be run better, and frankly, everything you describe, I will endorse. But the difference is, I think the real problem is bad, incompetent management. I don't think that the political leadership invests its political capital in bringing the best and the brightest to run and manage the housing authority and then make the tough decisions, which may mean you're anti-union on a couple of issues because you're not going to give it away to
there are a lot of entanglement in union contracts
absolutely, and there's a lot of feather bedding that goes on from time to time. So you have to be willing to face up to some powerful forces to make a difference in the housing authority, and all too often politicians don't want to face the truth.
Let me propose the following, and you tell me what you think. I believe there are 6,500 residents, tenants, under the care of the housing authority. We're going to have a guest on, Don Falk, who's with one of the nonprofits. There's several nonprofits. We've had Randy Shaw on this program several times with his organization. But his organization's housing 4,000 people right now. They're building 2 new units, and they will be up to almost equal to the 6,500 that are now being taken care of by the housing authority, and they're in the same income bracket for the most part, same kind of subsidies. Why not just take over the housing authority, let the board take it over, and contract these out to, and let competition prove who are the best property managers out there and fire them if it's still the same 10 years later? Why do we have to have a bureaucracy where these jobs are locked in, you can't fire them, cronies go there, people get buried there? Wouldn't that be a better idea?
I think it's a fascinating idea, and I'd be willing to explore it. I think you're putting an enormous burden on an extraordinary organization that is doing that, because this would be a huge load to dump on them. But nevertheless,
probably phased in, obviously.
And we've been doing that. You know, they've been doing that in bits and pieces as they farm out new developments to be built and operated by independent contractors.
And this is one of the great things you did, and I don't think people realize it, but when they go by some of these newer housing developments, you are the one who demanded that the architecture be townhome, community style, rather than the block, prison-like facilities that they were used to.
That was a character, yeah. The first one was Robert Pitts Plaza, which people can see right now out on the corner.
One Wards, I'm sure.
Turk and Steiner, absolutely. Looks like the rest of the neighborhood.
It does.
And at that time, HUD said, we can't give you that much money, it's too rich. I said, well, then I'll put it in. And the city put in $10 million extra to meet the difference between the HUD allotment and what we thought we needed to get the kind of quality that represents, and the rest is history. Since then, we've gotten a little bit better at that with design, and I think that many of the new developments with Hope 6, which unfortunately our public housing authority is not eligible to apply for now because they're in a financially troubled status, have made a big difference with a number of different developments around the city. One of the best is at North Beach, the new one.
Beautiful project.
With retail on the ground
with
side.
A Trader Joe's on the corner.
A Trader Joe's on the corner, and same old public housing on top, but you'd never know it. And that's what the future should look like.
It is a beautiful complex, and what do you see a difference in terms of crime and community between those newer developments that are designed like townhomes and with mixed use versus what's still existing?
Well, clearly the people have a different attitude because they sense that they're finally being treated like everyone else, and they're not being given housing that's easily identified as, quote, the projects, and the management in those places doesn't treat them like they are project dwellers. And I think the result is people feel and act differently.
You've come back to try to straighten out the housing authority. You're also hoping that HUD will bear the burden of this $15 million. You don't really care where the money comes from. You just want to get them out of their situation.
The court has given me the responsibility of finding that money, and because of my unique blend as a mayor and as a former federal official and someone who worked at the housing authority.
Regional director.
Right, exactly. Judge McCarthy and Judge Goldsmith think that I can get to places and think up solutions that perhaps the traditional.
What do you think of the mayor's, supposing they have they have a proposal that they're working on. What do you think of this proposal?
I hope it works. I'm trying to get to HUD to have them give us an answer. If that works, we're all done, and we can move on. But I think HUD is really stonewalling. This administration, the Bush administration, is really trying to destroy public housing. in any form, whether it's in a nonprofit form, as you suggest, or any other way. They just want to get rid of it because it's a headache and a budget buster for the federal government.
Yeah,
And
well, now Congress is controlled by the Democrats and a very strong Pelosi
and I think
there.
we'll see a little better, more sympathy.
Ken Garcia wrote an article.
Yeah.
He saw your project
Uh-huh.
as really part of a political campaign that you might re-enter politics in San Francisco in the mayor's race.
Yes.
What's your comment?
If I wanted to re-enter the politics and the mayor's race, the last place I would start would be with the Housing Authority, because it is an agency that has a number of huge problems that have not been addressed for a long time. And for me to try to fix them in the period of time between now and the opening of the next mayor's race would be foolhardy.
In the way you've gone about it, writing articles, and now you're doing freedom of information to get every email and every letter all the way back to, I think, 2002. In other words, you're showing an aggressive stance. It is a contrast with the current administration. Couldn't that be interpreted as at least to set up?
Well, what you're seeing is my style,
it's your style
of solving a problem by focusing on exactly what needs to be done, and I think that HUD is really the culprit here. I think HUD should take over that housing authority and bring it back to where it should be, but they're refusing to because they know it's going to cost a lot of money.
In the commitment you're making to save HUD because of your concern for the tenants.
That's right.
And it's a commitment that is on record. You've been doing this for how many years?
My whole career.
I
may be out of public office, but I'm not out of public service.
I don't mean to be pushing, but that same urgency is what got you into the mayor's race and won the mayor's race in the first place. You will not do anything unless you have some passion involved. I know you that well.
Right.
Is the city being run enough now that they don't need Art Agnos to come in and challenge the incumbent?
Well,
for the sake of the people.
A better answer is my passion right now is doing the job that the court has asked me to do for families that were deeply damaged by a terrible negligence on the part of the federal government and
the local housing
authority. And I'm going to be focused on that.
It's amazing, if you think about it, because I'm in real estate. We do property management. They'll come by, and if you don't put a fire alarm in your apartment, you have a compliance problem.
Absolutely.
One that can hold up a sale, one that can cause you to tremendous lawsuits. And how could they get away with now putting
Because it's a double standard. The federal government has not.
And we lost 6 kids, I believe.
Yeah.
And a grandmother, because they did not enforce the law that they placed on every other property owner.
That's right. If the housing authority were a private landlord, they would have been sued by the city, sued by the federal government, and they'd probably be in jail.
And sued by the tenants.
And they'd be in jail.
They'd be in jail.
And that's some of the things that I'm going to be doing.
We wish you the best with that.
Thank you very much.
Glad that you came back.
Thank you very much.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.